Buckle up, everyone, because today we are taking a deep dive into evolution.
Oh, yeah.
But not the kind of evolution you learned about back in high school biology class,
Right.
like survival of the fittest and random mutation.
Yeah.
We're talking about a completely new way of thinking about evolution,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes down to energy.
Absolutely. And these sources we've been looking at, they really paint a fascinating picture
They really do.
of how energy is the driving force
It's
behind,
the engine.
yeah, behind the shapes and the structures of life itself.
Yeah, so it's not just random mutations happening in a vacuum. It's like there's this
Right.
purposeful direction, almost.
Yeah, there's a system at play, and these sources, they call it mitochondria-driven morphogenesis.
Mitochondria-driven morphogenesis.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've all heard of mitochondria, right? Like the powerhouses of the cell.
Yes, the tiny power plants.
Exactly. But how do they actually shape evolution? I mean, we learn about DNA and genes and all that stuff.
Right? So the sources, they use a really classic example to illustrate this, and that's bird beaks.
Okay, bird beaks, I like it.
Yeah, so, the traditional view says that beak shapes evolved through random mutations, right?
Yeah.
And the ones that worked best, those are the ones that survived.
Survival of the fittest.
Exactly. But this new research suggests that there's a much more, how do I say this, a more dynamic process happening.
Interesting. Okay, so there's more to the story
Much more.
than just random chance.
Yes. So imagine a bird species, they come across a new food source.
Okay.
Like, let's say these nuts, and these nuts are really tough to crack.
Okay, like walnuts.
Yeah, like walnuts, exactly.
Tough shells.
So this creates a new energy demand on the bird, right? They need more force, more ATP,
Which
is the energy currency of the cells
Okay.
to get to the food.
So their little bird bodies are like, hey, mitochondria, we need you to step it up.
Yes, exactly. They're like, we need more power.
More power.
In the mitochondria, they actually sense this increased energy demand.
That's great.
They don't just sit back, they actually trigger changes inside the cell.
Wow, so they're like responding to the environment.
Yes, they're responding to the needs of the bird.
So it's not just the genes. It's like
It's not just the genes.
the environment is talking to the genes through the mitochondria.
You got it. And over time, these changes, they lead to physical adaptations, like a stronger, more curved beak.
So it's like a feedback loop.
It is a feedback loop.
The bird needs to eat tougher nuts, so the beak changes.
And the sources point out this is really important. It's not just DNA mutations that are happening.
Oh, interesting.
They talk about epigenetics.
Epigenetic.
Which is how things in the environment can actually change how our genes express themselves.
Okay, so our genes are like a blueprint, and the environment is deciding which parts of the blueprint get used.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, it's like the environment is highlighting certain parts of the blueprint.
Wow.
And so this bird that develops a stronger beak from eating those tougher nuts, it could actually pass that trait on to its offspring,
Oh, wow.
even if its DNA sequence didn't change.
So it's like a cellular memory almost.
Yeah, like a memory of the most efficient way to survive.
That's wild. So it's way more dynamic than we ever thought.
Way more dynamic. And what's even more fascinating is that mitochondria, they have their own place separate from the cell's nucleus.
Okay, wait a minute. So you're telling me that our cells have these little powerhouses inside them,
Yeah.
and those powerhouses have their own agenda.
In a way, yeah, they're subject to their own evolutionary pressures.
So they could be evolving on their own.
Potentially, yeah, and driving changes in the whole organism.
That's mind-blowing.
It is, and it makes you wonder, how did different life forms evolve based on this whole energy picture?
That's a great question. Like, why are there plants and animals and fungi and all these different types of creatures?
Right, so the sources, they talk about this concept of an energy hierarchy.
An energy hierarchy.
Yeah, and they argue that different life forms, they evolved based on their specific energy strategies.
Okay, I like where this is going.
So plants, for example, they've got chloroplasts.
Right.
They can harness sunlight directly.
So they're like solar panels.
Exactly. They're all about structure and slow and steady energy accumulation.
Like those giant redwood trees just soaking up the sun for centuries.
Exactly. They're the masters of patience when it comes to energy.
Slow and steady wins the race.
Right. But animals, on the other hand, they developed mitochondria for rapid ATP production.
So we're all about fast energy.
We need that quick energy for movement, for complex behavior, for quick adaptation.
We're the busy bees of the animal kingdom.
Yeah, and then you got fungi. They're somewhere in between.
They're the in-betweeners.
They absorb nutrients externally.
Interesting.
So this energy hierarchy, it kind of explains why we didn't just become plants.
Yeah, why aren't we all just chilling out like trees?
Because our cells, they craved that fast adaptable energy.
We needed that energy to move and hunt and do all the things that animals do.
Exactly. We had bigger plans.
It's funny to picture humans as just like lumbering trees.
Right.
Unable to invent the internet or chase down a pizza delivery guy.
That's a much different world, isn't it?
Totally different. So this energy lens, It can help us understand human evolution, too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, why did our brains get so big?
Right.
That takes a lot of energy.
A huge amount of energy. And the sources, they say that our mitochondria, they had to become super efficient
Okay.
at burning fuel sources like glucose and ketones to power those larger energy-hungry brains.
So it's like our brains were supercharged by those tiny mitochondrial power plants.
Exactly. They had to evolve to meet the demands of our growing brains.
And what about bipedalism, the fact that we walk upright?
Another great example.
Because that seems like it would take more energy.
You would think so, but actually the sources, they point out that standing upright made us much more energy efficient for movement,
Oh, really?
especially for things like long-distance hunting.
Okay, so we could outrun our prey.
Exactly. We should cover more ground with less energy.
Fascinating. So it wasn't just random chance that made us walk on two legs.
It was driven by the need for better energy efficiency.
This is totally changing how I think about evolution.
It's a paradigm shift.
It really is. And the sources, they go even further.
They do.
They suggest that we're not just observing evolution anymore. We're on the verge of being able to direct it.
We're entering a new era.
That's incredible, but how is that even possible?
Well, scientists, they're already experimenting with this.
They are?
Yeah, they're exposing organisms to different energy stressors, like
Okay.
hypoxia, which is low oxygen and unusual diets.
So they're putting them to boot camp.
Exactly, and they're tracking how their mitochondria adapt and actually drive physical changes in these organisms.
So we're talking about intentionally pushing evolution in certain directions.
We are, and the source material, it explores some really mind-blowing possibilities.
Like what?
Like how we might adapt to earthbound urban life.
Oh, wow.
The challenges of space colonization, and even the potential for biohacking evolution.
Biohacking evolution, that sounds intense.
It's about using technology to enhance our own evolutionary potential.
Okay, now you're really getting me intrigued.
I know, right? It's a whole new world of possibilities.
But before we dive into those futuristic scenarios,
Sure.
let's talk about the skeptics out there.
Yeah,
Because I'm sure not everyone is ready to abandon Darwin just yet.
of course not.
So how do we convince the skeptics that this new model of evolution is the real deal?
Well, the sources, they actually dedicate a significant portion to addressing the skeptics.
They do.
They provide a framework for proving this new model experimentally.
Okay, so they're not just speculating.
No, they're talking about hard evidence and mathematical models to support their findings.
So how do we prove that evolution is predictable and driven by energy?
The key is demonstrating that mitochondrial adaptations lead to measurable changes in the shape and structure of organisms.
So we need to show that when the mitochondria change, the body changes.
Exactly. And they propose a fascinating approach using the classic example of bird beak evolution.
Bird beaks again.
Yeah, it's a great example.
Okay, so instead of just observing beak changes in the wild,
Right.
we're going to bring evolution into the lab.
Exactly. We're going to control the environment and see what happens.
I like it. So walk me through this experiment.
Okay, so imagine we take two groups of birds with similar beaks.
Got it.
One group, we expose them to an environmental stressor, like a diet of tougher nuts.
And we're making their mitochondria work harder.
Exactly. We're forcing them to adapt.
Okay.
And the other group, they're the control group, no dietary changes.
So we have our tough nut group and our regular nut group.
Precisely. And then we track beak shape changes across generations.
We're like the beak police.
Exactly. We're watching those beaks very closely.
Okay, and what are we looking for?
If the group facing the energy stressor, if their beaks develop differently from the control group, and those differences are predictable based on the energy demands of the new diet, then we have strong evidence supporting mitochondria-driven morphogenesis.
So we're not just guessing, we're measuring.
We're measuring and we're analyzing the data.
This is starting to sound very convincing.
And the source material emphasizes this experimental framework can be applied to other organisms too.
Like humans.
Like humans, exactly. Imagine tracking changes in bone density, muscle mass, or even brain structure in response to different energy stressors.
Wow. So we could actually see evolution happening in real time.
It's a fascinating possibility, and the source material doesn't stop there.
There's more.
They describe cutting-edge techniques that could be used to directly manipulate mitochondrial function.
Okay, now we're talking.
We're talking about influencing the course of evolution.
This is getting really exciting.
It is. We're entering uncharted territory.
So tell me more about these techniques.
Well, let's start with bioelectric fields. Researchers have already shown that applying specific electrical currents to developing tissues can alter the flow of ions
Okay.
and actually influence cell behavior.
So we could use electricity to shape our bodies.
It's an incredible concept, and the source material suggests it's closer to reality than we might think.
That's wild. And what about gene editing?
gene editing with tools like CRISPR, we can now precisely target and modify genes, including those within the mitochondria themselves.
So we could actually engineer mitochondria with enhanced efficiency or stress resistance?
Exactly. We could rewrite the blueprints of our cellular power plants.
That's next-level biohacking.
It is. And then there's nanotechnology.
Nanotechnology, how does that fit into this picture?
Nanotechnology offers the potential to deliver targeted therapies directly to the mitochondria,
Okay,
bypassing the limitations of traditional drug delivery methods.
interesting.
Imagine tiny nanobots carrying payloads of antioxidants, nutrients, or even genetic material, all designed to optimize mitochondrial function.
It's like having a microscopic toolkit for repairing and upgrading our mitochondria.
Exactly. We're talking about precision medicine at the nanoscale.
This is amazing. And you mentioned something about using light to stimulate cellular energy production.
Yes, that's called photobiomodulation.
Photobiomodulation.
The source material points to studies showing that exposing cells to specific wavelengths of light, particularly red and near-infrared light, can actually enhance mitochondrial activity and ATP production.
So instead of reaching for that extra cup of coffee, we could just bask in some red light.
It's a possibility, and it's a much healthier option.
I'm starting to see why this whole field of bioenergetics has people so excited.
It's a revolutionary field.
It really is. But with all these powerful tools at our disposal,
Mm-hmm.
how do we make sure we're using them responsibly?
That's the big question, isn't it?
The idea of directing evolution raises a lot of ethical questions.
It does, and the source material acknowledges that this isn't just a scientific endeavor, it's a philosophical and ethical one as well.
We need to be careful.
We need to be very careful.
We need to consider the potential unintended consequences for ourselves and for future generations.
Absolutely, we need to have a conversation about this.
A big
A
conversation.
global conversation about the kind of future we want to create and how we use these powerful technologies.
It's both exhilarating and a little terrifying.
It is, but it's also an incredible opportunity
To shape our own destiny.
to shape our own destiny as individuals and as a species.
So before we get too carried away with these grand visions,
Sure.
let's bring it back down to the practical level.
Okay.
If researchers are serious about proving this new model of evolution and convincing the skeptics,
Right.
what are the concrete steps they need to take?
Well, the source material outlines a clear roadmap,
Okay, good.
emphasizing the need for rigorous experimentation, robust data collection, and the development of sophisticated mathematical models.
So basically, they need to show their work.
Exactly. They need to back up their claims with hard data.
What kind of experiments are we talking about?
They propose a multi-pronged approach, starting with experiments that directly manipulate mitochondrial function in various organisms,
Including humans.
including humans.
So they're going to bring evolution into the lab.
They're going to run controlled experiments to see how the mitochondria respond to different stressors.
That makes sense. What else do they recommend?
They also highlight the need for advanced imaging techniques
Okay.
to observe mitochondrial dynamics in real time.
So we can actually see what's happening inside the cells.
Exactly. We can watch how the mitochondria respond, how they communicate with each other, and how they orchestrate changes in the cell.
That would be amazing.
It would provide invaluable insights into the mechanisms underlying mitochondria-driven morphogenesis.
So we're not just looking at the end result, we're looking at the process.
We're zooming in on the engine room of evolution.
I love that analogy. And the sources also talk about the importance of developing new mathematical models.
Yes, to describe and predict evolutionary change based on energy principles.
So we can create simulations of evolution.
Exactly. We can see how different species might adapt to future challenges.
This is all so fascinating.
It is. It's a whole new way of thinking about life.
So beyond the scientific breakthroughs, what are the practical implications of this new understanding of evolution?
Well, let's start with health and wellness. Imagine understanding and harnessing our bioenergetic potential.
Okay,
You know, like it's as normal as hitting the gym or taking your vitamins.
I like that.
Personalized energy optimization program.
Oh, wow. So like tailored to your own body.
Exactly, like to your specific genetic and metabolic profile.
So not one size fits all.
No way, it's all about you.
That's awesome.
And it goes beyond just diet and exercise.
Okay.
You know, think about using light therapy to actually enhance mitochondrial function.
Oh, like those red light things I've seen?
Exactly, or biofeedback devices so you can actually monitor your cellular energy levels.
Whoa. So I can see how my mitochondria are doing.
You got it in real time.
That's incredible.
The possibilities are pretty amazing.
It's like having a personal trainer for your mitochondria.
I like that. Yeah, little mitochondrial coach.
Okay, but beyond just helping us feel better and have more energy,
Right.
what are the bigger implications for society?
Well, the sources, they suggest that this could revolutionize entire fields,
Like what?
like medicine, agriculture, even environmental conservation.
Wow. Okay, let's break those down one by one.
Okay, so medicine, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
We could develop therapies that target the root cause of disease,
Which is?
energy imbalances at the cellular level.
So instead of just treating symptoms,
Yeah, we go right to the source.
we're fixing the problem.
We're addressing that underlying bioenergetic dysfunction.
So it's a totally different way of thinking about healthcare.
It really is. It's a paradigm shift from reactive to proactive.
I like it. I like it. Okay, what about agriculture?
Agriculture, we could breed crops that are tougher,
Tougher.
more resilient, to climate change.
Oh, that's huge.
And they require fewer resources because we're optimizing their mitochondrial efficiency.
So we're talking about sustainable farming.
Sustainable farming that actually regenerates the environment.
Farms that are good for the planet.
Exactly. We're not just talking about human evolution. We're talking about the evolution of all life on Earth.
This is blowing my mind.
It's a big picture view.
Okay, but let's circle back to human evolution for a second.
Sure.
We talked about the ethics of it,
Right.
but I think we need to dive a little deeper
Absolutely. It's a crucial conversation.
because we're talking about pretty powerful stuff here.
We are the sources. They acknowledge that this power to influence our own evolution comes with huge responsibilities.
We could mess things up
We could, and we need to think about the unintended consequences.
for ourselves and future generations.
That's a big deal.
So it's not just about what we can do,
Right.
it's about what we should do.
It's about wisdom and caution and really thinking things through.
This needs to be a global conversation.
Absolutely. Scientists, ethicists, policymakers, everyone needs to be involved.
We need to decide what kind of future we want
And make sure these technologies are used for good.
for the betterment of humanity and the planet.
That's the goal.
Okay, so we've talked about the amazing potential of bioenergetics,
Mm-hmm.
but how do we get there?
Well, the sources, they lay out a roadmap for research. They say we need to focus on rigorous experimentation,
Okay,
reverse data collection, and developing those sophisticated mathematical models.
so we can really understand how this all works.
Exactly.
What kind of experiments are they talking about?
They propose manipulating mitochondrial function in various organisms.
So bringing evolution into the lab.
Exactly. We need to see how the mitochondria adapt in a controlled environment.
And what about mathematical models?
We need to move beyond those purely descriptive models of traditional evolutionary theory
Okay,
and develop models that can actually predict how things will change.
so we can simulate different scenarios.
Exactly. We can see how different energy inputs or environmental stressors might shape evolution.
That would be amazing.
It would give us a glimpse into the future of evolution.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We talked about the science, the ethics, the practical applications.
It's a lot to take in.
But I think the big takeaway here is that we're on the cusp of something truly revolutionary.
I agree. This new understanding of evolution, it has the potential to change everything.
It could change how we live, how we heal, how we feed ourselves, how we interact with the environment.
It's a whole new world of possibilities.
And it all comes down to energy.
The fundamental force that drives life itself. And let's think about the real world, like how this could actually impact people's lives outside the lab.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about manipulating evolution of like birds and stuff, but what about humans?
The source material, it talks about this a lot. They actually envision a future
Okay,
where understanding our own bioenergetic potential,
okay.
it's just part of life, like
Breaking your teeth.
exactly like going to the gym,
Okay.
taking your vitamins, it becomes that common.
Interesting. So we'd all be like energy experts.
In a way, yeah, like we'd understand how to optimize our own energy flow.
So what would that look like practically?
Well, they talk about personalized energy optimization programs.
Okay, so like a custom plan for my mitochondria.
Exactly, tailored to your unique genetic and metabolic profile.
So not just like a generic diet or exercise plan.
No. This would be way more specific.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it goes beyond just diet and exercise. They
Okay.
talk about using things like light therapy to enhance mitochondrial function or biofeedback devices.
Biofeedback.
Yeah, so you can actually monitor and control your cellular energy levels in real time.
Wait, so I could see how my mitochondria are doing like right now?
Exactly. You could see how different activities or foods or even your thoughts and emotions are impacting your energy.
Whoa, that's wild.
It's pretty amazing. The possibilities are endless.
It's like having a Fitbit for your cells.
I like that. Yeah, a little mitochondrial tracker.
So we could all be walking around with these super-powered mitochondria.
Potentially, yeah. We could all be operating at peak energy efficiency.
But beyond just feeling better and having more energy,
Right.
what are the bigger implications of this?
The sources, they suggest that this could revolutionize fields like medicine agriculture,
Okay.
even environmental conservation.
Wow, okay, so let's break those down one by one.
Okay, so medicine, for instance.
Hmm.
We could develop therapies that target the root cause of disease,
Which is often.
energy imbalances at the cellular level.
So instead of just masking symptoms,
Right, we're going deeper.
we're actually addressing the underlying problem.
We're fixing the engine, not just patching up the car.
I like that analogy. So it's a completely different approach to healthcare.
Absolutely. It's a paradigm shift from reactive to proactive.
Okay, what about agriculture?
In agriculture, we could breed crops that are more resilient to climate change.
Oh, that's huge.
And they require fewer resources because we're optimizing their mitochondrial efficiency.
So we're talking about sustainable farming that actually helps the environment.
Exactly. Farms that are not only productive, but also regenerative.
That's incredible. So it's not just about human evolution. We're talking about the evolution of all life on Earth.
It's a holistic perspective.
This is giving me hope for the future.
Me too. It's an exciting time to be alive.
Okay, but let's not forget about the ethical considerations.
Right.
We've touched on them, but it's a topic that deserves careful attention.
Absolutely. The sources, they emphasize this over and over again.
Because we're talking about very powerful tools.
We are, and we need to make sure we use them wisely.
We need to have open and honest conversations about the kind of future we want to create.
And make sure that these technologies are used for good.
For the benefit of all humankind and the planet as a whole.
That's the ultimate goal.
Well, this deep dive has been truly mind-blowing.
It has been, hasn't it?
We've gone from tiny mitochondria to the future of evolution.
It's all connected.
It really is, and it all comes down to energy.
Energy is the key to life.
So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and most importantly,
keep those mitochondria humming.
Because the future is in our hands.
It is, and it's looking brighter than ever.